Daily Words of God.
Currently, there are many people who are in the midst of trials and do not understand God's work. But I tell you, if you do not understand it, then you had better not make judgments about it. Perhaps there will be a day when the truth will come to light in its entirety, and then you will understand. Not making judgments would be beneficial for you, yet you cannot just wait passively. You must seek to actively enter. Only then will you be one who really enters. Because of their rebelliousness, people are always developing notions about the practical God. This makes it necessary for all people to learn how to be submissive. For the practical God is an enormous trial for mankind. If you cannot stand firm, then everything is finished. If you do not have an understanding of the practicality of the practical God, then you will not be able to be perfected by God. A critical step in whether or not people can be perfected is their understanding of God's practicality. The practicality of God incarnate come to earth is a trial for each and every person. If you are able to stand firm in this regard, then you will be someone who knows God, and you will be someone who truly loves Him. If you cannot stand firm in this regard, and you only believe in the Spirit and are incapable of believing in God's practicality, then no matter how great your faith in God is, it will be useless. If you cannot believe in the visible God, then can you believe in God's Spirit? Are you not just trying to fool God? You are not submissive before the visible and tangible God. So are you capable of submitting before the Spirit? The Spirit is invisible and intangible. So when you say that you submit to God's Spirit, are you not just talking nonsense? The key to keeping the commandments is having an understanding of the practical God. Once you have an understanding of the practical God, you will be able to keep the commandments. There are two components to keeping them. One is holding on to the essence of His Spirit, and before the Spirit, being able to accept the Spirit's examination. The other is being able to have a genuine understanding of the incarnate flesh and achieving genuine submission. Whether before the flesh or before the Spirit, one must always harbor submission to and reverence for God. Only one such as this is qualified to be perfected. If you have an understanding of the practicality of the practical God, that is, if you have stood firm in this trial, then nothing will be too much for you. Some people say, the commandments are easy to keep. You just need to speak frankly and devoutly when before God, and not make any gesticulations. This is what keeping the commandments is. Is that right? So, if you do a few things behind God's back that are in resistance to Him, does that count as keeping the commandments? You must have a thorough understanding of what keeping the commandments involves. It relates to whether or not you have a real understanding of the practicality of God. If you have an understanding of practicality and do not stumble and fall during this trial, then you can be counted as having strong testimony. Bearing a resounding witness for God primarily relates to whether or not you have an understanding of the practical God, and to whether or not you are able to submit before this person who is not only ordinary, but normal, and submit even unto death. If, by way of this submission, you truly bear witness for God, that means you have been obtained by God. If you can submit unto death and, before Him, be free of complaints, not make judgments, not slander, not have any notions, and not have any ulterior motives, then in this way God will gain glory. Submission before a regular person who is looked down upon by man, and being able to submit unto death without any notions, this is true testimony. The reality that God requires people to enter into is that you are able to obey His words, put them into practice, bow down in front of the practical God, and know your own corruption. Open up your heart in front of Him, and, ultimately, be gained by Him through these words of His. God gains glory when these utterances conquer you and make you fully obedient to Him. Through this, He shames Satan and completes his work. When you do not have any notions about the practicality of God incarnate, that is, when you have stood firm in this trial, then you have borne this witness well. If there comes a day when you have a full understanding of the practical God, and can submit unto death like Peter did, then you will be gained and perfected by God. Anything God does that is not in line with your notions is a trial for you. If God's work were in line with your notions, it would not require you to suffer or be refined. It is because His work is so practical and not in line with your notions that it requires you to let go of such notions. This is why it is a trial for you. It is because of God's practicality that all people are in the midst of trials. His work is practical, not supernatural. By fully understanding His practical words and His practical utterances without any notions, and being able to genuinely love Him as His work grows ever more practical, you will be gained by Him. The group of people whom God will gain are those who know God. That is, those who know His practicality. Furthermore, they are those who are able to submit to God's practical work.